Wake up in the morning, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I wanna move closer, but I don't control it. I know I've been trying, the door isn't open. I know it sound funny, but really though, in the beginning we really close. Now we just cruising up on the coast. Don't wanna lose you, I really don't. My God, I'm working so hard. I let my guards down and I'm feeling so far. You won't cut me off and I'm ready to grow and I'm ready to know you more. Please, I honestly say I'm mature. It ain't my decision, it's yours. But I will persuade with my all, cause I'm ready to run to your arms. I just want you to know that I wanna go to a place where I find you, a place I call home, a place where I'm not alone. And maybe I'll grow just a little bit more, and I'll be adored, then I'll be adored, then I'll be adored, then I'll be adored, then I'll be adored. I go back and forth when I feel your presence. I'm above the world, there isn't much better, but then I fall levels and levels below it. Don't know where I'm going, don't know where I'm holding. I say I gave up, but I know I didn't. It's just my frustration, I'm only human. I act like I know what I'm really doing, as long as it's you that I'm really choosing. I will never give up, no, I wanna do it your way. You're the king of the world, only wanna do what you say. I know that it's possible to give back my heart to you, do it that you choose. I just want you to know that I wanna go to a place where I find you, a place I call home, a place where I'm not alone. And maybe I'll grow just a little bit more, and I'll be adored, then I'll be adored, then I'll be adored, then I'll be adored, then I'll be adored. I know that you love me, I really do. Just wanna do right by you till it's through. Please don't ignore me, please just adore me. Wanna be closer to you. I just wanna make you happy. A shining light looking right at me. I give to you gladly, that's my reaction. I just want you to know that I wanna go to a place where I find you, a place I call home, a place where I'm not alone. And maybe I'll grow just a little bit more, and I'll be adored, then I'll be adored, then I'll be adored, then I'll be adored, then I'll be adored.
Okay.
Welcome to Parents and Pennies, where family meets financing and every dollar counts. Brought to you by MITM Business Consultants. Join your hosts, Art Abrahamian, with over 12 years of experience in finance, banking, and business advising, and Roy Rosales, a father of two and coach to many, who has an extensive background in real estate. These two family men are here for you, bringing real stories, practical tips, and financial wisdom every week to keep your family thriving. They'll help you secure your family's financial future through simple, memorable financial adjustments that will help you achieve your financial goals. Because when it comes to family and finances, it's not about having more, it's about making the most of what you have. Here's Art and Roy.
What's going on, everybody? Episode 11. I got to update that photo, dude. That was when I had hair. Episode 11. What's going on, Roy? How are you, brother?
I am truly blessed. And that was something, that's why I spoke over like, hey, we need to update that picture, man. How's everyone doing? Hopefully everyone is having a blessed day. Shout out to the 4 most important things in my life. And that's it. Be excited for today.
Yeah, today's topic is actually one that Roy preferred. So it is going, as you can see by the title, it is titled, Drive Smart, Spend Smarter, the ultimate guide to buying a car. You know, one of the things I will say is, especially amongst young professionals, the very first thing that they do when they get a job, buy a car.
And not any car.
Yeah.
They go Hellcat, they go to the max.
Oh, man. The loan, we'll get into that as we talk, but like, that's what it is, right? It's like you're young and you're 18, 19 years old,
Excited.
And you finally get, you know, a steady paycheck, and you may have had to have a ride, or you had a hoopty, or whatever the situation was. And you're like, okay, I have money and I want to get a car. And I have seen horror stories.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen, and we're going to get into it today, but it's just like, this is a really important topic. And unfortunately, like whether you're young or older, you still might have these terrible, terrible habits. So getting into it, right? Like, we got to buy a car without breaking the bank, right? So let's talk about some smart strategies. You know, it's one of the biggest, I don't know if you know this, but buying a car is one of the biggest financial decisions most people make. But they never fully consider the long-term effects beyond the sticker price, right? Because they just see the sticker price. They think, oh, I can afford this. The monthly payment makes sense. The dealer, you know, zhuzhed everything up. Oh, brother, for you, this. I'm going to go talk to my boss. We'll be right back. And you do this, this, and this, and this, right? From financing, hidden fees, insurance cost, depreciation. We're going to talk about all those things. Whether you're buying new or used, we have to determine whether it's the smartest decision for our budget, right? And not our budget of today, but our budget of tomorrow as well. So the average cost of owning a car in the U.S., this is the average cost, mind you, is $12,182 per year. And that includes a loan, payment, insurance, maintenance, and fuel. When you factor in on a monthly expenditure, 12,182 divided by 12, that's $1,015. Now, I don't know about you, but the average car on the street ain't no BMW or Mercedes. It's a Honda, Toyota, Camry, a this, a that, a Kia. So let's put that into retrospect. People are paying $1,000 a month collectively for a vehicle that is expressed in the, you know, conversation of things as being cheap and affordable. Reliability is another issue, but we're just talking about affordability right now. A car loses 10 to 20% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot. Everybody's heard that. The moment you drive it off the lot, it's already depreciated, and up to 60% within the first 5 years. So now you're paying over $1,000 a month for something that's depreciated 20% the moment that you walked it off. Most people have a 6 to 7 year loan, not a 4 to 5, and you're paying $1,000 a month still, but the car is already depreciated 60% of its value. And insurance costs, they vary, right? Depending on how good of a driver, how bad of a driver, how young you are, what's behind it, how many tickets. They could anywhere from $1,200 to $2,400 per year, depending on the car's make, model, location, and then, you know, your driving patterns. Like, I know somebody who has to have the SR 20-something form with his car, and just for his car insurance, because he had so many tickets and so many revocations of his license, just that SR additional certificate for his vehicle is like $600 more a month, just for that.
Wow.
So, like, in insurances, I personally know people that pay thousands in monthly insurance costs, not including the vehicle.
And that's poor decisions, right?
Yeah.
When driving.
Yeah, it's like, oh, going fast, getting tickets. It's like, was it worth it? Was you getting to work? You're already late.
Yeah.
You think being late 6 minutes over 10 minutes is going to change anything? You're going to get into the same amount of trouble that you're going to get into regardless. And now you've potentially just given yourself another financial burden on your shoulders in way of tickets.
Yeah.
So
No, and you know the one thing that caught my eye and is that 12,000, and that's just average, right?
that's the average. That's not a nice vehicle. That's like we took 400 million people, all the drivers in the world, and we're like, okay, this is the statistic number that was pulled.
So
And that was by the way, that was given by AAA.
yeah,
So it's not like we're pulling that number out of nowhere. That was a statistic that was pulled by AAA.
AAA, and that's you know, so in 3 years it's 36,000, right?
Yeah.
So
So your car that
it-
was 36 on the sticker, that's 3 years.
yeah,
And in those 3 years, you're already 36 in, and you have another 3 years to go. So you're paying 70 grand, 60 grand for a $30,000 vehicle.
that's crazy, right? So that's where for me personally, these are things for everyone. Why we bringing it up? Not because we're going through those experiences ourselves, but now we're asking the right and better questions about, hey, should we do this or not? Right? Asking the right people will tell you, have you looked into this? Like right now, just that 12,000 is like, it makes you think, right? And other people are like, go do it.
Yeah, you only live once.
Yeah,
you're young,
yeah.
go enjoy it.
You're good. And you're not thinking what the next year, 2 years, 3 years, the word you use, stuck.
Yeah.
Right? You can get stuck into a job that you don't want because you're paying that car itself.
That's why most people are miserable in their corporate jobs, is because they can't afford to leave. And what I mean by that is they live such a close life to their expenses and their income, where it's like if they leave, they lose it all. They bought a car that they could only afford on this salary, and if the salary gets cut, then it's like, now what? Now you can't afford the car. Now you can't afford this. Now you can't afford that. And the reality of the matter is this: if I have to choose what I'm paying and what I'm not, and I ever get into financial hardship, I'm paying the house. The rest of the debts, I don't care. Because if I had to choose keeping and losing, I'm going to lose everything but my house. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
But it's like, you're 18 years old and you got yourself into $1,000 a month car payment. You make $1,200 a month working your part-time job. You're literally working to have this vehicle.
Yeah.
That's what it is. You are literally busting your ass 40 hours a month if you're part-time, 80 hours a month, or biweekly if you're full-time, to have a car.
Yeah.
Where are your priorities? And then you're complaining that the world's not fair, finances is BS, you have to be rich to be rich. It's just like we're being pushed to want fancy, nice things.
Yeah.
And for some of us, maybe that $1,200 is affordable because the way we live is so budgeted, where it's like, okay, we can afford to do that. But there are other people who don't budget and they just kind of go with the flow of things. And it's like, now you're working to pay for something. It's just it's not an ideal way to live your life. And this doesn't just for a car. It's just in life in general. You should always plan for the worst, expect the best. You buy a house that you can afford, but you choose not to because you can only afford it if everything was perfect all the time. And that's just not how the world works.
And that's the great part you're bringing that up. You know, people hesitate sometimes to buy a home because they have that $1,000 car payment.
Right.
And they're like, that's too much. I'm like, oh, wait, so you're renting for $3,000 a month, and then you're paying $1,000 a month for a car. So technically, you're spending $4,000. So you're telling me you can't afford a $4,000 mortgage payment? And that's where, for me, I'm like, okay, we need to understand we need to change that priorities and that thinking, because if you're putting $1,000 into a car, like you just said, it devalues it as soon as you drive it off the lot. A property doesn't. It only builds equity long term.
Right, long term. Because
Long-term.
depending on when you buy too, there's a factor. And one of these real estate days, we'll get into the nitty gritty of numbers.
But long term,
Sure.
it's gonna add the value.
Yeah, of course.
For sure, you're gonna get that back. But the difference is now, instead of leasing $3,000 in your house and then leasing or buying a car for $1,000, now that's $4,000 that you're spending that is not yours. But if you put that on a house, now you could afford a house.
Right.
So that's why I just want to make sure that difference into that particular part about, versus leasing and, and buying a car that you really, really like, but now you're stuck.
Right.
Now you can't buy the house that you really want for your family and the security.
when you don't understand finances, right? This is the really big thing. Is the lack of not knowing is what hurts you the most. Because you have all these aspirations, you have all these dreams, you want to accomplish these things, and you think age is somehow going to make it different, right? Most people, I'm only 18. When I'm 30, it should be figured out. The problem is, you're 18, you don't know it. You continue not to seek this knowledge and information, and you're 30, and you still don't know it.
Yeah.
And now you're stuck renting, you're stuck owning a car that you shouldn't own, you're stuck renting a place that you can't afford to buy because on paper you can't afford it, and you racked up credit card debt, and you racked up this, and you racked up that, and then you factor in, like, not understanding how a loan process works, right? Like, you're talking about how many people can't buy a house because of that car payment. Why? Because it affects their debt to income, their CLTV ratios, their a million different ratios as to how, specifically debt to income, that most loans can't be underwritten, especially in the federal mortgage rules that say anything over 40% debt to income ratio.
That's
so
true.
It's like, okay, cool. You need to get rid of this car to buy this house. Which one's more important? You want to live in the house? You want to live in the car? And I think you were the one that talked about that, where you had to tell a customer, like, hey, you want this house or you want your car?
In that particular client, and he did that. He literally did that the following week. He's like, I went to go trade in my car and I bought the other one, and now I have no car payment, and I was able to afford the house that I really wanted. And years later, he got a promotion, right? And now he bought the car that he really wants. But
Right.
he can now afford the car and his most important thing, the house for their family. But he always, because of that, it allowed him to see, like, I need to get a promotion. I need to make more. So it motivated him to, you know what I mean? Apply itself. So it is a blessing. It's just understanding and asking the right people about it. Like right now, we're going to walk through that. You know, what is the difference between financing versus paying cash? You know, and what's smarter? Well, when you finance it, interest on car loans adds significant to the total cost, and an average interest rate in 2024, new cars are at 7.1%, used cars are 11.3%.
Damn.
So a 60 months loan on a $30,000 car at 7%, you're paying over $5,600 in interest rate alone.
Yeah.
So that, you know, again, you just, when you go deeper into the numbers, you're just like, what? Really? And then
that's not including sales tax. Like, most people see the sticker price and they think that's the price of the car. But when you factor it's like 10 to 11% sales tax on top of that, when it's all said and done with licensing, registration, taxes, a $60,000 car becomes an $80,000 car. A $30,000 car becomes a $50,000 car. Then you add another $6,000 to $10,000 in interest. And that's the thing. New cars 7.1%, that's if you qualify. Most people don't even come to the table qualified. The annual credit score of most people statistically is like in the low sixes. So you remember the story I told about a coworker who got like a freaking Dodge, I don't remember what it was. It was a Dodge. What's the SUV? Not the SUV. It's like they make them in a Hellcat version too, but she didn't get the Hellcat. She just got a regular Dodge
Durango?
Yeah. Bro, a 20-something thousand car at this time, and her loan was like 60 grand. It was like a 37% loan, and that was the day where they're like, Art, help her. I'm like, how am I supposed to help her? She already signed for it, and I read the contract, and they spelled her name wrong. Dealership rushed to the bank to try to get her to redo the loan. I was like, don't sign this. You're going to live in this freaking car. And then she's like, oh, Art, I'll get you lunch. I was like, you better give me more than lunch. I just saved you 70 grand. You know, remember I told you that joke off camera. But it's like the implications and the long-term effects. And here's the problem. Like in her case, she's a banker. She's supposed to know better, and she didn't. Most of the people who get stuck in these bad loans are kids whose parents don't know better, think they're getting a great deal because some schmuck is like, oh, I'll get you into this. And they're thinking, no, I got you this low payment. But you got me this low payment at a high interest rate on a car that's already used that's not even going to live the life of the loan. That's the thing, is like sometimes you have to look at a loan and go, will the vehicle outlast the loan? And if it's got 100K miles on it, and you got another 6 years, and you can barely afford the car as it is, well, start time to think about, like, well, what about the repair cost? Because most of these cars are coming out of warranty when you're buying used. that's where the whole lease to buy option, and we'll talk about it too, but it's like paying cash, right? Like it's easy to say, oh, I'll pay cash, but not a lot of people have that kind of cash laying
That's
around.
Right. That's right.
So you have to understand, like, when you're looking at it from the perspective of like, okay, how do I make this make sense? You have to put away your wants and your needs. Like, you have to put away your wants and look at your needs. You need a car to get to work.
Mm-hmm.
I had an 800 horsepower Stage 3 Roush Mustang back when they first came out in 2019 when the new body style came out. And I was working like 10 to 12-hour days. That car sat more in the parking lot than it did anywhere on the road.
So it was just like a showcase.
It was a showcase car. It was in multiple magazines because I was one of the first people to do some cool stuff with that car when it first came out. I had it in, American Muscle magazine, and I had, a couple famous wheel manufacturers make a custom set of wheels for it. So it was fun. I'm young at this time. I was making great money. I don't regret buying it, but I could afford it. That was the difference. But here's the thing. I was paying $900 a month for the car. I had almost a $400 gas payment every month because I was putting gas. And this is at the time when gas was like $2 a gallon. And I was still paying like $400 or $500 a month. I was filling up every other day because that car got 9 miles to the gallon after it was all said and done, doing 800 horsepower to the wheel. It sat in the parking lot outside my office when I was working. And I watched it. It was beautiful. I got many, many compliments of how nice it looked outside. But again, I was working all day. Then something came up where it was like, hey, housing. I found a really good house. And I said, time to get rid of the car because it was having electrical issues. So I lemon lawed it. And again, most people wouldn't know to do something like that. Most people would just say, oh, I'm going to keep it, or I'm just going to go trade it in and be over under. No, I lawsuited the vehicle and lemon lawed it so I could return it and get my money back. And when that happened, I exchanged a $1,500 to $2,000 car payment for a $1,400 mortgage.
Yeah. And how was that investment?
I'm chilling.
That's right.
I doubled. My house at the time was $260. Now it's almost $600.
And you just talked about the payment, right? At that moment, people would say, dang, $1,400? That's a lot.
Sure.
But now, $1,400 is a one-bedroom studio.
Right.
So
I traded a car payment for a house payment that in today's market, that house payment is a minimum $3,000 to $4,000.
Minimum, right? So long term, everyone, that's what I need you guys to think about past the 3 to 5 years is, what would this do to me? That's why right now, any big decision you're doing, you got to talk it through with the right people.
Yeah, not your homie that just gasses you up, and we love that guy. Everybody needs one of those guys. That's your hype man, but the hype man ain't somebody you go to for financial advice because he's just going to hype you up to do things that you shouldn't do.
Oh, yeah, I'll go with you everywhere you go. Well, yeah, I know it's a bigger car, right? It's just that's so talk to me about buying new versus buying used. I think you have a better understanding on that one, Art. So what would you advise someone right now thinking about buying either a new car that is at $65,000 or a used car that is $60,000? However, different bells and whistles.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great question, right? So we got to look into what are the new and used car benefits and negatives, right? So we look at a new car and we talk about latest safety features, technology, full manufacturer warranty, which is massive, but it has instant depreciation, 10 to 20% drop in value, and it's a higher insurance cost. Let's look at used cars. And we're talking used cars like 2 to 5 years old. Avoids the biggest depreciation hit, lowers insurance premiums, and if it's a certified pre-owned, options can provide warranty coverage, assuming that it's still within the window. However, its potential higher maintenance cost. The average used car price in 2024, and this is off of Kelley Blue Book, is $27,000 compared to a $48,000 for a new car. So almost double.
Yeah,
it's like 1.7. Almost double. So the key takeaway there is a lightly used car, 2 to 5 years old, saves you thousands while still offering reliability and modern features. However, not knowing why the car was given away in the first place is a factor. Some people can't afford their vehicle and they have to, like your client. He chose a house over a car, so he let it go. I'm sure he took a financial hit. He was over under when he swapped into a new car or whatever he did, but it was worth it for him. But then there's other people where it's like, hey, this car is about to break. I need to get rid of it. So understanding like, okay, if the car is broken, how much is left on the warranty? How much is left on this? Who checked the vehicle? Because they talk about this certified pre-owned, but it's like, who certified it?
Yeah.
The dealership that's trying to sell it to you at a markup? Because the reality is if they buy the car for $5, they're not going to sell it to you for $7. They're going to sell it to you for $12.
True.
Because that's how they make their money too. So there's certain things where it's like, and the next topic is my favorite topic. It's like, especially for kids, like young kids just getting their driver's license. I think like you want a safe car, but you don't want a new car. Because the new car, they can get into accidents, they can ding it, they can do this. And it's like, okay, sure, you can fix those things. And as long as they're okay, that's the important thing. But that mindset's too short term. We need to think about long term. Your child is going on your insurance. True. These accidents, these dings, these things, even if the car is new, used, old, if you call the insurance and even just remotely say, hey, I'm thinking about filing a claim, they open that up.
Yeah.
Whether you go through with the claim or not, they still consider that an open claim.
Yeah.
It just was never a fulfilled claim. And most insurance brokers or reps, if you talk to one, they'll tell you, doesn't matter whether you use it or don't, or get the money or don't, the second you pick up the phone and call, they consider that an open claim. So now you've got an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old behind the wheel. You got her a brand new Honda Civic, safe car, reliable, but you're not factoring in that, yeah, you got her the car, but if she crashes, dings it, this, that, you still got to call the insurance. And now your insurance premiums are going to go up. So now all of the vehicles are going to be more expensive. So it's this like hindsight of like maybe the beater that if she does total it, God forbid, or he does total it or something happens where it's like, I paid like $3,000 for this car. That's why I bought this car. I'm not going to call no insurance. The only time I'm going to call insurance is if somebody hits them and it's a total loss or they're hurt, right? And that's where somebody like Nuttegg, shout out Kids in your law firm.
That's
like,
right.
If you get hurt during an accident, that's who you want to call. But when you don't think about things like that, where it's like, oh yeah, my kid's going to be that age too, and what do I get them? I'm going to high school. I went to Palm Springs High, and it was like, I saw some kids driving brand new Rubicons. I saw some kids doing, driving this. I had a 1991 300E Mercedes. And this thing would literally die in the middle of driving. I used to carry a hammer because it would overheat, and I would pull to the side of the road, open up the trunk, and I would have to hit the fan with the hammer to get it to start spinning so the engine wouldn't catch fire.
Wow.
And in the middle of the road, bro, it would just stop at the worst places possible. It would just die. And, that was a car given to me by my aunt. And I love that car. But the moment I got a job, I had to get out of that car because it was a safety hazard, bro.
Yeah.
It was a safety hazard. But it did the trick, right? It did the trick at that time. And when I did get my first car, I leased a Honda Civic. Not an Accord, I got a 2-door Honda Civic, and I was paying like $230 a month in a lease. And I was making maybe $800 a month in my part-time paycheck. So I even then was like, sure, I could go get an Infiniti, I can go get a Dodge, I can go get this, I can go get that. And mind you, I'm like 18, 19 years old at this time. It just didn't make sense financially.
And also, someone would have told you then that doesn't understand that either, would have told you, why are you leasing? Go and buy.
Sure.
Right? However, that decision at least allowed you to not be stuck. Right? It's a lease. You're only there for 2 or 3 years, and then, hey, you're in, and now you're in a better position at your job, or now you can make better financial decisions, right? Into buying a house, whichever it is, right? So it's so important to understand, like, the next 2 to 3 years when you're making a decision like that, where are we going to be? What are we trying to do? So that's so important to, to have that in your mind. And talk about negotiations and avoiding dealer scams. Like, what do you mean by that?
Before we talk about that, I want to just go back to this lease topic. So the reason that I leased, just because most people ask, like, why do you lease? Why do you own? let's talk about the two differences really quick, and then we'll go into the negotiation factor. Leases are cheaper than purchases because you're only financing a portion of the vehicle, 1/3 of the vehicle divided by the term. It's 33. That's usually how you can determine the rate. It's like, or the price, 33.3% divided by the term plus fees. There are restrictions because you can only drive X amount of miles, 10 to 15,000, and you have to pay for more mileage. And if you go over on mileage, it's usually a quarter, a quarter for every mile you went over, which can add up quick if you overdrive. However, when you're young, and if you're going to have to co-sign for somebody, being on a 2-year lease is a lot safer than being on a 6-year loan.
Oof.
Also, when you factor in certain things like I'm going to say it in the nicest way possible without, because we can't censor, but sometimes you have to get effed to do some effing, right? And when you're young and you have no credit and you have no history, the first loan you get is going to be a horrible one. So it's better to minimize getting effed for 2 years and then building a solid credit history with good payments and a big loan. Because again, having a car payment versus having a Best Buy credit card, they speak different volumes on a credit report. You could have an 800 score and all you have is a Best Buy credit card and nobody's going to give you anything because all you're showing financial institution is you know how to buy a TV and pay for it.
Yeah.
But if you have a car, revolving line of credit on a secured product, it'll help your credit score. You could have a 7 or a 6, and it'll do more for you than that high 7, high 8 on just a Best Buy credit card. So it's understanding that sometimes, strategically speaking, I will co-sign a lease probably for my daughter. And that way I can start building her credit.
Okay.
But I'm going to minimize the effing by only having 2 years. And I'm not leasing no fancy schmancy car. I'm getting her a basic Toyota, Honda, something that was reliable because a child needs a vehicle. When they need a vehicle, they don't need a name or a badge or any of that stuff. I don't care. I don't want people to get in her car.
Gotcha.
Because my child's responsible for those people's lives. And if she can't drive the way that she needs to, and some people who drive really well, I mean, things happen.
Yeah.
So we just want to make sure that whoever gets the car is safe, but beyond that point, it's understanding that sometimes, when you lease something, you'll never own it. You're just throwing money and you're never going to own it. But then there's also factors of like expensive cars, high-end cars. You don't want to own those cars.
Yeah.
Most rappers, most of these people that you idolize on TV, they don't even own their stuff. They're all
leasing.
rentals. They're all leases. They're all rentals because they can't afford it.
Yeah.
I have clients who have cars that the oil changes cost $30,000.
That's crazy.
Tires cost $25,000, $40,000. Who the hell wants to deal with that? You're better off owning the car for 2 years, paying your monthly payments, throwing the key back at the dealership and saying, give me the next new one.
Yeah.
I didn't like this car. I want to try something else. But when you buy, you don't like the car, you're stuck with it.
That is true.
It's depreciated. You're stuck with it. You can't really flip it for anything else, and you're going to take a loss if you buy something else. You're going to be over-under on your loan. You're going to roll it into the next loan. You're never going to get rid of that loan. I know people that have still been at their 30s are now floating the same auto loan that they've been floating since they were in high school.
Wow. That is crazy. Oh, man. And, and I hope you guys take a clip on that one. That's very important information. Again, something that I wish we would have been taught in high school. It's like, hey, you're going to start making big decisions as soon as you hit 18.
Yeah.
And the first big decision, the first thing that comes in your head is I want to get my own ride because I want to have freedom. I want to do this. And
there's ways to do it.
There is ways to do it. But because you have little knowledge of it, the first thing you want to do is all out. I'm going to go all out, right? And now you are literally starting your adult life in a negative.
Wrong. Yeah,
in
you're
a negative,
starting wrong.
in a negative money and debt. And then it's going to cause you to be how would I say, scared of making risk or moves because you're like, I can't leave this job because I got to pay this, right? So it's important, everyone, to really just go through those informations and feel good about it. Pray about it, for sure, pray about it, and ask the right people because those right people are going to make you think about that decision.
Right.
And if they make you think, that's a good thing. You don't want someone just to say yes. You want someone to say, are you sure? Did you think about this?
Right.
Because what you say yes to, you're going to say no to everything else. So
I love that. Bro, I love that. What you said, say that again.
what you say yes to, you're gonna say no to everything else.
Arian, I want you to clip that. I love that, bro. You said yes to it today, and guess what? Now you have to say no to everything else.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
You made a decision, a financial decision, to have the one thing you wanted, and now you're going to pay for it by missing out on everything else that you wanted. I love that, dude. That is awesome. Awesome thing you just said. It's not awesome of a topic, but it's an awesome thing you just said. And unfortunately, I can't tell you how many parents I've seen screw their kids in these bad loans. I cannot tell you. I know a few people personally. I'm not sure if they're in here right now. And if they are, if they could just share a bit of their experience on their very first auto loan. I'm kind of hoping he's here. But if he's not, in a few minutes, maybe I'll tell the story. But where it's like you're young, you don't know any better, and you trust that the people who are your parents should do what's right for you. And they might pressure you into a deal or a loan that they think is a good loan, but who are they to think that that's a good loan?
Yeah.
No offense to your parents, or if you're listening and you're a parent and you think, damn, Art, you're not supposed to put me on blast like that. But the reality is like, you're not a surgeon, so do you give surgery advice? You're not a finance expert. You shouldn't be pushing your child into a loan that you think is good because your experience has told you that that's good. Well, again, your experience is only limited to what you know and what you don't. And if you're going to say, well, I learned the hard way and this is less hard, it doesn't make it the right way.
Yeah.
It just makes it a little bit less hard than the way you learn, but you're still teaching bad habits and bad situations. And I'm going to wait. I'm just going to keep an eye on this chat to see if he's here and he can share what his story is. But going into what you were talking about, where it's like negotiating and avoiding dealer scams, right? Dealers make the most profit on financing, extended warranties, and add-ons, not the car. That's why they're so pushy on the extended warranties, because a dealer's not going to make the money on the interest that you're paying. The corporation does.
Yeah.
The note holder makes that money. The dealership's incentives are at the time of sale. That comes from down payment. That comes from warranties. That comes from add-ons. Everything beyond the scope of that dealer does not care about you, does not care about the vehicle. When you're talking about key tactics, right, in securing financing, you want to avoid the dealer sometimes because the dealer could offer inflated interest rates, right? And, you want to research the car market to see what the car's truly worth. You want to look at other vehicles at different dealerships of the same vehicle to have them price compare. And some dealerships will say, we can't match that price. Cool, I'm going to drive 200 miles to go get the car then. Because that 200-mile drive, the couple hours that I'm going to put into getting this loan is worth the longevity of the loan, because it's going to be saving me not just initial MSRP, it's going to save me taxes on it because there's sales taxes when you buy your car. Remember, we talked about it. So if the car's $5,000 less, then that's 10% less in sales taxes that I'm paying, which means that's 7% less in amortization financing over the loan that I'm doing as well. So it's factoring in these things. And then the purchase price is indicative of what? Your registration.
Yeah.
That's another thing people don't think about, right? It's registration costs. So sometimes dealers will offer the better deal. I used to have people that would come to the bank and be like, hey, how is it that the dealership was offering me 2% from the same bank, but you're telling me it starts at 7%? That's because the dealerships pay the banks to have one person in their own in-house financing. So the rates to keep the lights on are much cheaper at the dealerships than they are the banks. Most of the time, I'll tell you this, credit unions overperform standard banks. It goes, dealerships, number one, typically have the better rates. Standard dealerships, not the buy a car, no credit, no money, not the local guy. Dealerships, credit unions, and then banks. But sometimes credit unions could have a better deal than dealerships. You kind of just have to shop around. Connect a Federal Credit Union, no affiliation to them, no sponsored. Fantastic for loans. Fantastic for loans. I use them myself, and I think I locked in a 1% or so. So it's one of those things where it's like, different scenarios, different, credit unions, everything's different. Do your research. Don't just fall in love with a car and then sign.
Exactly. And that's literally what's happening. It's just you think you fell in love with it and that's it. It's gonna happen, and you just want to make sure those numbers are right. And if you're tight and you're right, then hey, you're gonna feel better. But if it's tight and you're stressing,
Exactly.
Don't
You're
do
gonna
it.
live. You're gonna work and live to pay this car, and you know, negotiation stuff. Like, you have to be realistic with your negotiation too. The car's 30. You can't expect them to give you for 15. You have to be able to walk away and remember that this deal is on your terms.
Yeah.
And you have to negotiate it and do what you need to do. But the reality is, if you need to wait to make it make sense, then that's fine. You know, you got to factor in hidden costs and fees, right, to watch out for as well. Dealer fees, documentation fees, VIN etching, nitrogen tires, extended warranties, $500 to $2,000 in extra costs alone. Gap insurance, something that the most dealerships won't even tell you. Typically speaking, at most dealerships, they will offer you a gap policy. If you're not familiar with what gap insurance is, it's essentially like, hey, the car's worth 30, the insurance will cover X amount, and then the gap insurance will cover the rest. Most dealerships tell you you have to get our gap, which is true sometimes. But if you call your broker up and you go, hey, I want gap insurance. So this happened when we bought my wife's BMW. Some dealerships offer two types of gaps. They offer the dealer gap, and then they offer a standard gap. And the standard gap is much cheaper than the dealer gap. And they don't even like telling you have an option. They're like, would you like gap insurance? What we did was they were like offering us gap insurance. I said, how much is it? Like, oh, it's like $200-$300. Or no, I'm sorry, it was like $1,000, which normally is like $300 to $500. And I was like, I said, well, give me the other gap. They go, we don't offer any other gap. BMW only does one gap. Picked up the phone, called my insurance broker. I was like, hey, how much is the insurance? Cool. How much for gap? $10 more a month. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Why am I going to throw $1,000 payment into the vehicle and then finance that for 5 years at an interest rate? For what? I'll pay the $10 a month for 60 months. It's $600, and my car now has full gap insurance as well. So, you know, repair and maintenance costs too. Luxury cars, minimum, the standard from Consumer Reports, $1,200 per year.
And I can tell you that is true. That is a little bit more than that,
right?
For sure.
It depends on the year.
Yeah,
some years are good, some years are bad.
Yeah. So that is true for luxury cars, for sure.
And economy cars, $400 to $600 per year. So that's why talking about what's used, it's not just the car payment, it's not just the insurance, it's not just the gas, it's not just this, it's not just maintenance. It's also, hey, you might have to be paying $400 to $600 per year depending on how old this car is. And when you don't have warranty, that makes a big difference, right? So then it's understanding like hidden fees, long-term maintenance costs, and trying to prevent financial surprises.
Next one.
Yeah, next one. Go for it.
What is the best time to buy a car and market trends? So the best time of the year is the end of the month, end of the quarter, or December. Best deals before the new inventory arrives. That is good to know.
Yeah.
Right? Because all these times you're like, I want that car. And it's the first week of the month. And you're like, well, let's pray on it for the next 3 weeks and see if it's still feeling the same way that we've talked about before. It's like, you know, is it really a good thing? Let me think about it.
Yeah.
And then we'll see how that goes. And, or the holiday weekends when they have better, like President's Day, Memorial Day, Black Friday, they have better interest rates, probably those times. But you would have done your research already for you to make that decision for that President's Day, right? Current car market trends, used car prices remain high but are dropping in 2025. Adoption is increasing, leading to better incentives on electric vehicles, which you have one.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that, by the way.
Well, the incentives I think that they're referring to is more about the $7,500 federal tax credit. So you can apply that at the time of purchase, or you can take it on your taxes. So I usually recommend people take it at the time of purchase. So if the car is $50,000, it's already $42,500.
Gotcha.
Because you get a $7,500 tax credit right out the rip. So different vehicles have different incentives. Different vehicles have different, benefits. It's the same thing like with taxes. And again, I'm not giving you tax advice. I'm a licensed tax preparer and professional, but I'm not giving you tax advice. It's the same reason why people say like buying solar versus leasing solar, because the company leasing it to you gets to get the EV tax credit or the solar credit, the 30% of the total cost of it versus you. And other times I've told clients, I'm like, hey, you might want to find it, but it's going to be $90,000. Right. But you're going to get 30% of it back as a tax credit.
Gotcha.
So it's understanding certain things where, again, all financial implications and decisions that you make, you just want to do with the sense of like, don't just make the decision overnight.
Yeah.
Make it make sense. Do some research, figure out what's going on, kind of like what you were saying. Timing your purchase strategically is what can save you thousands. There's also factors of like, hey, certain specials come around where it's like the car you might have wanted doesn't have the special and the car you might not have wanted has the special.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, well, this is kind of cool and it's got a special rate going to it. So you're like, all right, let me see if I can lock it down. Do I need it? No. But do I want it? Yes. And can I afford it financially? Yes. Is it going to be a burden on my family? No. Even if things go wrong, could I still afford it? Yes. Cool. Then it's okay to make that decision as long as you have all your ducks in a row. Now, if you're like, I have a choice between a house and a car, I would never say pick the car over the house.
Yeah.
Because a car comes and goes. House, like you said, like in our situation where it was like we traded 15 for 15 and now my 15 saved me 25.
Yes. And now that 25, now you can afford the car that you want if you wanted to.
Right.
Go
the 25 that I saved on the mortgage, I could afford a nicer car.
Yeah,
because I'm not having to pay it in rent or mortgage or whatever.
Yeah. And now you have more control of everything that needs to be right. What's important, because back in a couple years back, did you have your kid?
When I had the Mustang is when I got, so the time that wife told me she was pregnant is when I got rid of the car.
Okay.
Because
so
I made that choice where it was like, okay, it's time to go get a place. It's time to get rid of the vehicle. And it's.
You made an adult decision that was helping your family and the security of your family.
Yeah.
Right? Because now your family is growing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I didn't even have a family. I just had my mom and my dad and my brother wasn't even living. So it was like, it was time to start my own family. And it was like, this car's nice, but I've got bigger responsibilities now.
And I always tell my clients is once we find the right house to call home, everything will make sense and the doors will open. And then 5 years later from now, you're going to say, thank God I did it.
Yeah.
Because now you're in a better position and now you can do as what you want, celebrating the birthday parties, all that stuff in your home. You can't celebrate Thanksgiving in your car.
I mean, you could, but
You
it's going to be a
but
sad Thanksgiving.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather have my family come or my friends come at my house and celebrate those priceless moments where my kids are going to remember that.
And I feel like somebody listening is going to be super defensive and be like, well, Art and Roy, you guys are talking about getting a house when it was $1,400. Like, there's no way we can get a house between 3 and 5. It's like, okay, fine. We're not going to sit there and lie to you and say there's a $1,200 house payment waiting for you, because there's not. However, the question you have to ask yourself is, when the time comes and that opportunity does arise and you've worked through the chains, you've gotten what you've needed to get, and you have this opportunity to purchase, are you going to be in a position to be able to purchase?
Yeah, there we go, right? Are you going to have any restrictions, right? Holdbacks, or oh man, I can't do it because I have this car payment, or I have this something. So, because sooner or later, if you're telling us, oh, there's no more $1,500 payment, you're still leasing. So that means you don't have control.
Right.
The landlord has control. And I guarantee you, the last 6 years, it has gone up in your rent.
Yeah.
So regardless of what you think, oh, there's no more, there isn't. But if you would have made that decision 6 years ago, there was. But who was in your life 6 years ago that allowed you to say, I want to buy the car versus buy my own home?
Right.
And that's why it's so important for me to go hit the high schools now. I'm passionate about that because I want to disclose that. I want to tell them that. I don't want them going at 18 and being like out of high school, they're not going to college or they're not doing anything. They're like, I want to feel good. So I'm going to go buy the nicest car that I can afford right now. Hold up. that can stop you from owning a home by the time you're 20
I'll
or 21.
never be able to afford a home, Roy. It's too expensive, but I can afford this $1,000 car payment and not a $3,000 home. What do you tell them?
Yeah, I'll be like, look, I understand, but you can't sleep in that car. However, we can go find your house 30 minutes from here, and you're driving, but you're driving home.
Yeah.
And in 2 or 3 or 4 years later, it builds equity, and you're in a better position now. And now you're getting promoted. Now you're making more. Now, hey, I want to move back to the city, which now you can.
Or you could just rent it out, too.
And
There's
there
that,
you
too.
go.
It's like I personally know somebody who saved up practically all his life, bought a bunch of homes, and even recently, again, he's not a millionaire. He's a normal guy, makes, I think, $65,000, $70,000 a year, but he lives so strict in his budget that he's able to continue to roll these big down payments because he doesn't spend his money. He's very frugal. And I guess there's good and bad to that too, but he pretty much buys houses and then doesn't even still lives at home. But he's like 3 houses, 4 houses.
Yeah.
He builds on them. He makes them bigger. He gets more tenants. He does this. He practically buys houses to rent them out, and he just lets them pay themselves. He's like, even if it doesn't pay itself, even if it doesn't make a profit, as long as it's paying itself, somebody else is paying the mortgage for me. Yep. So it's like one of those things where it's like, yes, we understand the reality of the situation, that the $800 car payment of your dreams is more realistic than the $3,000 mortgage payment of a house you don't want. Mm-hmm. That's not the point that we're making. We're not saying that what you're saying is irrelevant. We're also just saying that financially, the price of houses comes up, comes down, comes up, comes down. You need to be put in a position that when that house does hit that market price in which you can actually afford it, that you're in a position to buy it. It's just being in the position. We talk about this all the time. I have heard countless times, oh, you're so lucky. Oh, you're so lucky. You got your house for such a good price. Oh, you're so lucky. I wish. And I said, I'm not lucky. I was strategic. Because the reality of the situation is every single person who's told me that I'm lucky, I've always asked the same question. Let's say tomorrow the house next door went up for sale for the same price that I bought my house. Could you afford it? Do you have the down payment in your bank account? Do you have closing costs in your bank account? Do you have the credit to support it? Do you have the debt to income to support it? No? Then I ain't lucky.
Yeah. Clip that. But that's exactly it, right? Are you ready for those opportunities when they present themselves? Or are you blind? Like, oh, I can't afford it, so I'm going to throw everything else away.
Let's put it in retrospect, because I want to do something here before we wrap up, right? Let's say the car you could afford is $1,100, right? Mm-hmm. And instead, you decide to lease something, and you get yourself a really decent lease, and you spend $300. So now, you are saving $800 a month, right? You don't have a house. You're still living at home. We understand that. But you chose to get something that was more economically affordable, and just a car payment. You are saving $800. Let's multiply that $800 by the time of the term. 60 months standard. You're going to walk away with $48,000 in savings. That's a down payment.
Yeah. A down payment for your next home.
That is a down payment for your next home, because you have to factor on your first home, your FHA, you only need 3%.
Yeah. 3 to 5%. That's it.
So if you had $50,000 cash, not that you would buy a house this big, but you can afford
a $500,000 house.
More than that.
Yeah, but now
you could afford $1.5 million.
Well, again, the down payment with the closing costs.
Sure,
right.
But you could roll closing costs into the loan. That's a strategic thing too, where it's like, hey, I did that. It's like I'll pay the extra $20 a month over 30 years to have this guy spend 30, 40 grand.
Which everyone, we can dive in a little bit more into our next couple sessions where we can talk about real estate, and that's when I could come in a little bit more into that. But yes, you can definitely have strategies to help you and get you into the right house to call home with just the bare minimum. Right. However, at the end of the day, I still want you to say, are we ready to say yes to this? Because now we're saying no to everything else. And that is so important. And once I started using that sentence, that line to all my clients, it just made it more sense into the clarity and realistic of buying a home.
Right.
And so I think we we did great, man. This was so powerful. Again, I just wish we had this type of topics or conversations in high school just to have, man, because, man, this is so important because you can be stuck for the 6 years. You're talking about 24. By the time you're 24 years old, you're going to be stuck with the $1,100 payment.
And you might not be able to afford that in 6 years, all those 6 years. So it's like, great, now you've screwed your credit up for 10 years. Guess what? You remember that house that you thought you couldn't afford? Well, guess what? Now you can afford it, but you can't qualify for it.
Damn. My boy. That's why we have these podcasts, Parents and Pennies, guys, because of that. We live through that, and we want to be. We see it. We hear it.
We watch people suffer, and we're trying to spare. We've either suffered or seen enough people suffer that we're trying to spare you the suffering.
Yes.
And having a bit of humility and understanding that you don't know it all, just like we accept that we don't know it all, and we just push for more information and knowledge. Concluding everything, buying a car, huge financial decision. With the right planning, you can avoid debt traps, hidden fees, and bad deals. The smartest buyers research, negotiate, consider long-term costs before signing anything. Whenever you're buying new, used, or leasing, planning ahead save you money and stress in the long run. Going back to the story, because I don't think he's here. I'm going to tell the story. I personally know somebody that when he was young needed a vehicle, and his mother took him to a dealership, one of those like family-owned.
You don't need no credit.
Screw you on the lot the moment you walk in. He's 18 at this time. I really wish he was here to tell us the full loan, but this loan was on a Ford something. It was a Ford Ranger or something. Brother, it was a used Ford Ranger, and it was a 9 or 10-year loan. Mm-hmm. I've never seen a car loan go that far. That car was like $200 a month because of how long the loan was.
Wow.
But it was a 10-year loan. And for the last, I want to say, year and a half to 2 years, the car completely died. So my friend was stuck with the car payments. And this is how you know it's shady, that the place would let him make car payments on credit cards. And they would track him and literally pick up the phone and call, hey, your payment's due. And he'd like, okay, put it on the credit card. This car was a paperweight, and you couldn't get rid of it. I tried everything to help him get rid of it, and the most I can get him was like a couple $100. And he was stuck making these payments for like a year or two. He ended up having to get a new car. The transmission was completely shot. It was either spend $3,000 or go get a new car. So now he was floating 2 car payments, and one day I picked him up, I'm like, dude, the car's inoperable. Don't even pay the insurance. Cancel the insurance on it. At least save yourself somewhere. Fortunately, whatever ended up happening, he was able to pay the rest of the vehicle off. But I told him, I said, call them and tell them the car's not even working. I owe $2,500 after 10 years of making these payments still. This is what I'm willing to give you. Mm-hmm. And they were like, okay, that's fine. Send us this and we'll wash it. Because they've already screwed him for so long, almost 10 years. And is it his fault? Not really. Could he have done more research? Yes, but you trust your family thinking that you're getting the right thing, and they're just pushing that, look how cheap it is right now, but they're not talking about the long term. And yes, the car went for a long time. It went for, 7 to 8 of those 10 years, but it became such a stressful situation that he was stuck having to pay it for the last 2, and then being out of pocket just to get out of that loan, and then give it to some junkyard person for $300.
It was a burden.
It was a burden. It became such a burden and ruined his credit. It was a whole ordeal, man. It was crazy. It was the most shark loan I've ever seen. So, if I was in that person's life at that time, or we were close enough for him to reach out, of course I would have said, no, dude, don't do that. Just go lease. You'll pay maybe $100 more, but you'll be done with it in 2 years, and you'll have the credit to buy something else. I mean, fortunately, he was able to get himself a great deal on the recent vehicle that he just purchased. But the point is, this isn't like 10 years ago. This is like literally within the last year and a half that this situation. Oh my God, somebody says, I know who that was.
Shout out.
Shout out. That's not the person who just messaged. But, it's just one of those things where it's like, man, that one decision became a trap, a debt trap, and it just haunted. Hey, you know what? How long was that loan? Do you remember? He knows the person who just messaged. I just want to see if he knows. Oh, we have 5 viewers now. All of a sudden, everybody's here. How much was that loan? Do you remember? You don't have to say specifics. I just want to remember. Like, do you remember how long it was? Like a 9-year loan, right? There's a little bit of a delay on our end, so he's going to get in a second.
But man, that's how they get you, right?
Yeah.
That's how they get you. They make you look all pretty and stuff. And then next thing you know, you sign something that, damn, it got you stuck.
God, I want to. Oh, it was a 10-year. He says, damn, I want to say it was like 10 years. It was a 10, dude, on a vehicle. On a vehicle. Like, I didn't even know. Most dealerships are like 7, 8 is the most I've ever seen. And then that loan was a 10. I just could not believe it. So it's one of those things where it's like, at the time it made sense because you thought it made sense, but you didn't realize what you were really getting yourself into. So it's like, out of those 8 years, and those 8 years cost. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I see, the $400 to $600 a year in maintenance and this and on top of the payments, on top of the insurance, where it's like, you probably were better off leasing.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. And it was not a new vehicle, right? It was a very extremely used vehicle. So then on top of a used, like I think about having a 10-year-old vehicle used and then having to finance it for another 10 years. You have a 20-year vehicle.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, if that didn't get you going into, damn, I should get more educated and ask more questions, better questions with the right people. This is the segment that you wanted to learn and listen. We're not doing this just to waste time. We're doing it because we've experienced, and he just shared a story about that. And, we're always going to go through some type of decision making sooner or later that you want to have that right people to, hey, let's walk through this. Is this the best decision right now for me and my family?
Yeah.
And it may suck that they tell you no, but that's what you needed to hear.
Yeah.
Because 6 months later, you'll be like, I can't even enjoy Thanksgiving. I can't enjoy Christmas because
car payments due. I don't know how I'm going to pay it.
Yeah. So you only get one life, one ticket to life. So I want you all to enjoy it. Spend it with the most important people in your life. And wherever you go, it's the best time to do it. Enjoy it and love them, because any day, right, you're not guaranteed. And doesn't mean you got to go all out on your vehicle. Go all out with your family.
Yeah, go all out with your family. Go all out with your savings. That's how you set yourself up for success. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This is episode 11, and we look forward to meeting you on the next one. Roy, anything before we get going?
Have a blessed week. Enjoy it. St. Patrick's Day. Right?
And none of us are wearing green.
Yeah. Well, I'm wearing green, dog.
Okay,
green pants. So, hey, take care, y'all.
Pinched, I guess.
Yeah. Have
All
a
right,
blessed
guys.
week.
Take care.